1, 2, 3, 4.
It's time to dip your toe into the show they call the Showrunner Show.
The time has come at last to cue up our podcast. It's called the Showrunner Show. The Showrunner Show. The Showrunner Show.
That was a good one. I like these.
Felt pretty good today.
Well, welcome to the Showrunner Show, where every week we demystify some aspect of the job of showrunning for anyone who works in TV, who wants to work in TV, or just wants to know how it's all made. I'm John Eric Dowdle.
And I'm Stacy Shabosky. Thank you so much for joining us for number 4 in our pitch series.
Yeah, this week we're talking about 5 pitch potholes to avoid or explain and shore up. You know, there's a number of things that make your pitch potentially less sellable. And it's just worth knowing that as you go into it so that you can push against it or have some countering, ability to make sure that those don't derail your pitch.
Even just calling it out and being like, we know this is, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like red flags. What are the red flags buyers are, looking for and would make it too easy to say no. And then how do you shore up those things? So it's not to say, a show will never sell with any of these, but they're just things to look out for.
Number 1, a red flag to look out for, to avoid, if you can, period. If it is a period piece. Obviously, TV these days is filled with period pieces, but they are very expensive, and they are often done by people with tremendous clout, like a Shonda Rhimes or Ryan Murphy. If you're more of a newbie, maybe you want to avoid those expensive period pieces.
Yeah. And even for, you see there's a show, Buccaneers, coming out. Like, all their artwork looks very modern. Like, it takes a moment to go, wait, is that period? So I think period pieces, there's a couple things that buyers are worried about. One is expense. And one is relatability. Like there's a wide held belief that the more current a show is, or the more, present day it is, the more audiences will relate to it. Therefore, people will show up to watch the show. Whereas period pieces are just harder to sell to audiences too. So I think that's a part of it. So it's harder to make and harder to sell. And and even if you're, like the idea is like, and Buccaneers is a good example. Like, okay, it's period, but it feels very modern. Like the, poster of that, like everyone's like sitting and hanging out in a very modern, like they're not sitting, prim and proper like you think of as a period piece.
I think a lot of period is being done that way. Anachronistic. Is that the word? Anachronistic. Yeah. Like the great Bridgerton, the one you just mentioned. Sorry, the name escapes me. But I feel like that's become kind of a hot thing. Maybe like a Sofia Coppola thing to do to make it anachronistic.
Yeah, there was a movie, A Knight's Tale, and they played, bunch of like, I remember way back then they were doing music from, Queen and, stuff like that where, ways to, how do you make a period piece feel like a present day, event?
Yeah.
And you might be like, oh, my movie or my show is set in 2001. That's not really period piece because, but it is like anything that is not currently like right now. You could, your characters, your actors, the wardrobe department could go get clothes right off the shelf, at the mall today and bring it to set, and actors could wear those, and cars that happen to be on the street. Like, when we did the Waco series, like you can't just shoot like a parking lot full of cars. You know what I mean? Like we had to put all those cars in the parking lot and make sure that it was nothing. Period,
no Teslas, no PT Cruisers.
Yeah, totally. It's like it just it creates a level of complexity that can just be hard. And that's not to say, obviously, that that no period can work. You just have to know that may be a question you get in the room. That may be part of it. Like when we did Waco, we're like, okay, yes, it's set in the 90s, but you won't go into this and look at it and be like, wow, we're not going to play the period. That we kept saying, we're not going to play the period. We're not putting everyone in like 80s sweaters, and you know what I mean? We're not going to make them. And you know, there was some of that came through. Steve Schneider had, Paul Sparks' character had a lot of
Cosby sweaters.
Cosby sweaters, and yeah, he would quip like, I just put on whatever they give me. I just wear it. You know?
Well, I think that's why this episode is called 5 Pitch Potholes to Avoid or Explain. Because here's the thing, like, think about it. Your thing's period. Is there a good reason it's period? If there's not, just then don't even make it period. But if there is a good reason, that should be a big, hot, important point of your pitch. Like lately, my daughter and I have been gobbling up Pen 15. And that's exactly what you were talking about, John. It's period, but it's period from like 15 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but it's still period. But why? Because that's the age those 30-year-olds were. You know, it's 30-year-olds playing 13-year-olds. That was the era they were 13 years old in. And their audience is going to be filled with 30-year-olds who remember all the stuff I don't remember because that was not my age group of like, oh my God, it's the AOL chat room, remember? Haha, that's crazy. You know what I mean? But I'm sure that was part of their pitch of like, this is why it's not current day. This is why it's so much funnier and better doing it period. So I guess what we're trying to say is you can do period if you have a damn good reason to do it. And if you have a damn good reason to do it, that should be a big part of your pitch.
Yeah, that's really well said. And, you know, and just as you're looking at your own project, there might be like, well, it's an adaptation of this book that was written in the 1800s. Therefore, I'm setting it like, but would it be possible to modernize that? Would it be possible to set it in the present day? Like just maybe taking an hour and looking like if you're self-inflicting the period nature of your project, just maybe look at like what would happen, you know, as a mental experiment. Yeah. What would happen if I set it in the present day? And if it doesn't work, then at least you have maybe a better answer for why it has to be set in that era.
Love it.
Number 2, foreign, like something that's set in a foreign land in a, faraway place, like, and I'd say again, sort of the same rules as period. It's not, stuff like you can just shoot anywhere. It's not like there's certain, hubs of production where there's tax incentives and stuff where you can shoot. And, those tend to be, Canada, Atlanta, Santa Fe, or New Mexico, they tend to be, there is South Africa, as a tax incentive place, but that's a really hard place to get actors in and out of, to get execs in and out of, to do all this stuff. And so if you're going to set this in a foreign place with foreign languages, like it just makes things more difficult. And it's not to say, it's undoable, especially if there's a really great reason for it. And there is, on the flip side of that, like if it is a Jack Ryan series or something, like the foreign nature of it is part of what makes it feel, or, James Bond movies, part of what makes them feel so, exciting is this glamorous foreign quality of a lot. Like you get to go to Paris and Vienna and all these beautiful places in that movie or show. And that's very alluring, but that's very expensive too. And part of what those shows are selling is how big and glamorous they are.
Right. Emily in Paris is selling Paris, and it's delicious and delightful. So you can do it, but just like with period, it's got to be for a damn good reason.
Yeah. Well said. Number 3, expense. Like if you have a show that's like sci-fi epic, this is going to be Star Wars, but for TV, this is, I guess they're doing Star Wars, but for TV, but those are expensive. Those are not cheap shows. Something that's set on Mars, something that needs tons of visual effects or is, in some way going to be incredibly expensive. That is something, people will have some concern over, and there may be clever ways around some of that. One of our movies, we had this a scene where a helicopter crashes on a rooftop, and And people kept flagging that, like, well, you can't afford that on this budget. And we're like, yeah, but we're not going to see every angle of it. We're going to be with our lead characters and we're going to see it like through things, which will make it, we're not doing the Michael Bay version of this. We're doing a subjective point of view version of this. And it'll be
eventually there's going to be a helicopter just on its side and a swishy camera,
Yeah, totally. And that worked. It was right. But we had to have that conversation 100 times.
Yeah.
And it was, and still people kind of half believed us. And
Right.
so, that's something to just be aware of.
This is an interesting one where I don't have much to say on this topic because I have so much less production experience than you. Will you just throw out like a few things that are expensive? CGI. So you don't want to have a bunch of dinosaurs. You don't want to have a bunch of fighter planes. So like CGI type things. What else?
Yeah. I'd
Water.
say, water. If you're going to set your show, it's Jaws, the television series, like that's going to be a hard thing. Like you're going to need water rigs and, boat rigs, and everyone's going to get seasick and it's going to slow things down. Like, and just anytime you get out on the water, super expensive. Like, let's say you're doing a show and you're like, oh, the whole city is flooded. We read a script for Hurricane Katrina thing a while back. It was a great script, but it was like, you're taking a boat through a flooded city. Like that is going to be incredible. That is $100 million plus drama. You know what I mean? Like that is going to be a real uphill battle to get made. And
When a network could fill their slate with like, couldn't we just do something where there's like a therapy office and
yeah, totally. The cheapest thing is two people sitting and talking. You know what I mean? Like you have two people at a table having lunch talking. Like
Let's do that.
That is the cheapest thing. Two people like on a boat in outer space in zero gravity.
Yeah.
Just anything like something that the predicate like that absolutely needs like every scene has rain in it, and it doesn't work if it's not raining the entire something set 100% at night.
Unless it's I was thinking the exact same thing, unless it's on a lot, unless you got it, unless you're shooting it like, what do they call that? Not on location, but on a set, on a lot, close set
on a
or
lot.
whatever.
Yeah. Like, lots of kids. Like if you're like, okay, this is a show about it's a kindergarten full of kids in space, zero gravity set, you know what I mean? Like, and then transition, they're underwater, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you're just, and don't
That
worry.
show actually sounds awesome.
That does sound, yeah.
A boy and his dinosaur.
Yeah, totally. Like that, and those things can be done, but you just may have to think through how they could be done in a way that won't destroy like budgets, because like nobody wants to sign up for a fiasco for something that's unshootable in that way.
Yeah. Number 4 for 5 pitch potholes to avoid or explain: unhelpful attachments. This is the other side of the coin from last week's episode when we talked about how helpful attachments can help your pitch. This is the flip side of the coin.
Without naming names, somebody who's been canceled for good reasons. Like if you're like, oh, this person's been canceled for good like, and they're not doing anything and they signed up to do my show. Like you can go around pitching that show and people will be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why do you have that person attached?
I think about that all the time and it gives me the giggles of like, it's Woody Allen directing Kevin Spacey, like,
oh yeah, I know. It's, and and you can have connection, have feelings about, these people on one side or another, you know what I mean? But like from a pure marketing standpoint, just looking at it through a marketing lens, which is a
business lens.
Yeah, business lens. It's a pretty cold lens to look at it through. Some of those, and sometimes it's people, a studio or network might have a personal, beef with, and you might be like, oh, like this network will never buy something from that studio. Like we've had a number of those where we're like bringing a pitch out. We're like, why won't Netflix even hear the pitch? It's like, oh, because they hate that studio and they've had
Really?
like bad blood, So there's like even having certain studios or this studio and this network, because they're owned by rival corporate entities, can never make a deal. They will never be able to make a deal between the two of them. And therefore they won't hear your pitch. So Drew and I once were, we were like kind of like helping out with something. There was a showrunner. We went out to lunch with this guy and he was like, oh, don't Google my name because, it's like all lies. We're like, what? So we went home, immediately Googled his name. It was like fired for toxic, practices. And we were like, oh, this.
Yikes.
This will never sell, with that showrunner, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And we're like, we can spend our time better elsewhere. This is not a winning play because that person had, at least according to the press, kind of torched their own goodwill. And
I would put that in the life's too short file, whether it's, a showrunner or cast, or you know what? There are a lot of talented showrunners out there. There are a lot of talented producers. There are a lot of talented cast. You don't have to work with somebody who is notoriously unpleasant or toxic.
Yeah, that's really well said. Like that, over and over, Drew and I have, when we have found ourselves working with people who aren't aligned with us, like in the way we deal with people, you know what I mean? Who are cruel or, there's some like, kind of cruel, kind of sadistic people out there, and it's good to stay away from them.
Yeah.
And, and there's, to your point, there's wonderful human beings who are very famous actors. And there are wonderful human beings who are, like producers and directors and, straight across the board. Like we've, been very blessed to work with like really, really wonderful people. But really just, it takes one person who's showing up mean, to really make everyone's, just life a little less happy. And especially with the TV series, like could go for 10 years. The life's too short is a very important one for your own sake, especially.
I have one to add for this category of unhelpful attachments, and this is a note geared for young writers, new writers. I had the experience several times in my early writing career of attaching myself with producers or people who had worked in production and were people who were segueing into being producers, who wanted to become producers but weren't yet. And I did this like 2 or 3 times where I got together with people, we hashed things out, we brainstormed, we pitched something. They said, that sounds great, do that. I went off, I wrote sometimes with a partner. I think most of these were with partners. Wrote comedy stuff with partners, brought it back to these producers or these wannabe producers and said, here it is. And then they looked at me and said, great, who are we going to shop it around to? And I'm like, oh, no, that's your job. That's why I attached myself to this project with you, because I bring the words because I wrote them and you bring the connections because you're the producer. But that is a conversation I should have had in a skillful, I don't know how you would say it skillfully, but basically the equivalent of like when somebody says, hey, I think you're really talented. I love what you do. We should work on something together. These are my bona fides. I've been an assistant for this showrunner, blah, blah, and I'm looking to get into producing. We should work on something together. Like, you should have that conversation early of like, awesome, that sounds great. Like, if we had a project like this, like, who do you have connections to? Who could we go out to with this? Like, I wouldn't have even brought this up except that it happened to me so many times of I didn't have that conversation. Mm-hmm. I wrote a project for someone specifically that they sort of custom ordered like a sandwich, which is not a thing I would have been interested in, Yeah,
that's great. Number 5 is too topical or not topical enough. Something in your story is too topical. Like it's the topic like right now, Drew and I, for example, had like a couple years back, we had something, an AI project and we were, developing that. And right now in this environment, like AI is what everybody's talking about. It feels too topical to us, in this environment where I would guess there's 50 AI projects being pitched right now. And, I'm sure some of them are great. And I'm sure, a couple of them will become series and be amazing. And everyone will be like, well, of course, like that show happened in this moment because it's AI and it's such a topical topic. But ideally, it'd be the show that was getting made a year or two ago that like timed that perfectly. As opposed to trying to follow a trend. Like, well, everybody's talking about this in the news right now. Of course, this is going to be a hit show, and trying not to chase the thing.
If you have a representative, if you have an agent or manager, I feel like this is a good thing to run past them. To be like, hey, I'm thinking about what to write next. I'm kicking around this idea. What do you think? Are people hearing stuff like that now? Or are they not? I think that's a good one to run past them.
People who know, like, yeah, are there a lot of people selling this kind of thing? And trying to stay out of competition. Like, you don't want to, like, in my mind, you don't want to be one of many people pitching on the same kind of thing. You want something that differentiates you. And if you're going to be pitching an AI thing, AI can't be the point. You know what I mean? Right now, everyone's talking about AI. Like, that can't be the point is AI. It's going to change everything. Like, that can't be the point. The point is how it's, I don't know, applies to this one very thin, sliver of the world, and really developing something deep on that level. So not too topical, not topical enough, I'd say, is something like, doing, it's a Dukes of Hazzard, reboot, or, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe that'd be awesome. Maybe that just feels like a 1970s, thing of the past or whatever. I'm just using that as a random example, but something that feels that is a little passe, that is like, doesn't have a connection to, we're telling the ancient Greek story of this, like, okay, but why is that relevant to us today? And I think having if it's something that's not topical, to have a reason that story needs to be told today. And how is it how is it related to what's happening in the world today? And with Waco as an example, like, that really started the division between government and population. And, there's a direct line between the events of Waco and the January 6th storming the Capitol. There's a direct link between those two things. And we, drew that link between those things as we went. And I think that's what makes it topical and, important to tell today. Otherwise, it's just a 1990s story that would seem less relevant.
Number 6, this is a bonus because we promised you 5, but you know what? People were giving you 7. Number 6 is a limited series. Yes, there are plenty of limited series out there. God knows we're developing one ourselves right now and have done them in the past as well. They do happen, they do sell, but they just aren't a lot of bang for your buck money-wise with all of that investment in, casting and sets and costumes and all that. So if you can't, it's better to go out and try to sell a series that could have legs and run for 3, 4, 5 seasons than to try to sell a limited series.
Yeah. And, to your point too, Stace, like, it's part of it too, is it's marketing. Like, if a network is going to market a series, but they only get one season out of it, there's no like amortization of that marketing spend. You don't get the wind at your back for seasons 2 and 3 in success. It's a deadlift from the start of the season to, and you get one season out of it. And I think the marketing spend is a huge part of that too.
Interesting.
But like, one thing with the Hulu series, we were told, limiteds aren't selling, and I think a lot of people who had limiteds either tried to convert them into ongoing or just waited. or just killed them. And Stacey, you did something really interesting. You had a in Success, we could do this, we could create an ongoing based on this, with this idea.
I think John right now is quoting the pitch itself. I think what he's saying is that they said, oh no, God, we're going out and selling a limited, but limiteds are dead. What do we do? And so we just added a paragraph that was basically like something we said in the pitch saying, look, we think this story is perfect for a limited series. However, if you were interested in talking about how this could work as an ongoing, we actually have a lot of great ideas to that end, where we would lean a little bit more in this direction. I actually don't even know. We actually came up with a cool idea, but I think in the pitch, I don't even think what we said what the idea was. Like, the true story is a 1996 double homicide at the Iowa State Fair. So what we came up with was you could find interesting crimes that happened at different fairs or state fairs or carnivals and zero in on different ones and take some of your cast of characters with you, right? Because the concessionaires and the carnies and stuff, they travel from place to place. So you could take some of your cast and travel them with you. And so that was our idea, right? Of like, okay, if somebody wanted to be ongoing, we could do that. I don't even think we said that in the pitch. I think we just teased it out. Yeah. And that way, because your pitch is always going to be followed with a question and answer session, right? Yeah. So we just threw it out there. And that way, if we happened to be pitching to somebody who had recently gotten a mandate from their bosses saying, no limited series, but they liked what we were selling, they were cordially invited to ask us about it in the questions and answers. And you know what? They never did.
Yeah. And we had a good answer for it. Like, we had a good answer. If they did. And, we could build that out. So we had thought through, on Waco, in Success, we'd love to do a, season 2 of, and in fact, we actually got to do that season 2. So there is a world in which, your limited will become an ongoing or an anthology or, some other version of that. But having thought through that question, just so you don't get a no, nope, it can only be a limited. If you have some way of, okay, in success, how could they make use of the marketing money they've already spent? Having something to say on that front could really be helpful. And then number 7, too much detail. And this is counterintuitive, but let's say you figured out the entire, 5 seasons of this show, and you're going to pitch every character's arc from the start of the 5 seasons to the end of the 5 seasons. You have 20 characters. You're pitching all their stories. Your pitch is 2 hours long and just never seems to stop. Everyone's eyes are going to glaze over. Yeah. There's a point at which there's so much detail that it's hard to find the threads within it. Okay, but what is this about? What is the experience? What's this show going to feel like? What's this show going to, you know what I mean? What's the big idea with the show? What's the, what am I listening for? I think that, really selling the premise, not how much work you've put in.
Yes. And I know this backwards and forwards. I've got every detail worked out. No one cares. It's just going to confuse the point of what you just said, John. What is this about? And I think one of the simplest ways to put it, we were talking with Rich Fox, we had that those couple of episodes of our podcast where we spoke with editor Rich Fox, and he was saying, when you have a problem episode, you sometimes have to go back and go, okay, what is this about? There are so many subplots, they're all treated equally. Let's go back to the basics of what is this episode about? I think it's the same for a show with a pitch of, especially if something is an ensemble, or it has a lot of strong characters, you should not go into all the details about it. To go back to what we were talking about last time, The Good Wife, it's got a million great characters, right? You could go on and on about character number 11 on the call sheet's backstory, but you don't want to, because what it's about is the good wife. It's about her and her journey. And I think just going to back to that basic in the pitch of saying it's about this main character, or perhaps it's about these 2 main characters and what they go through. And yes, of course, you'll want to hint at and talk about the other supporting characters, but just in the pitch, never forget that they are supporting. Yeah. There should be less detail about them, and you should invoke their name less often as you're describing the episodes, the arc,
Yeah.
Like I bet I obviously wasn't there for the Succession pitch, but I'm imagining, they could have talked about all the siblings in great detail, but I'm guessing the pitch mostly focused on Logan and Kendall.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I would do. That's how I'd pitch it. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
going to be too confusing.
Yeah, totally. And the other siblings, well, you know what I mean? But yeah, like if they got into the deep, like, and these are the problems that the family will face. And these are the, like, yeah, I could see in Succession that, yeah, there's a point at which detail becomes an enemy. And
For sure.
More things for them to go like, oh, I don't like that. Let's not buy this.
Yes.
Like, don't get your show passed on for the 7th lead character's backstory. You know what I mean?
Right. More stuff for them listening to go like, I don't like that. It's also muddy. It also, I think, and this is something we've talked a lot about in pitches, TV is a collaborative medium. You're pitching to people who are going to want to collaborate with you. So if you're trying to impress them by showing them like, I have thought of everything, there's no detail I haven't already imagined and decided on, well, then there's no room for them to play. Like you can't impress them by being like, no, this is exactly what it is. I've got it in my head. I don't need your help. Just listen to me talk about, character number 12's romantic relationship. No, that's not going to work.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, in summary, keeping this one lean and mean. In summary, 7 pitch potholes to avoid or explain. If your show is a period piece.
If your show is foreign, set in a foreign land.
If your show is going to be very expensive to shoot.
If your show has unhelpful attachments, people who have been canceled or are problematic or just a big old pain in the butt.
Or that they have a personal beef with. If it's too topical or not topical enough.
If it's a limited series.
And if your pitch has too much detail. Or I guess conversely, not enough detail. Like it has to kind of have the right amount of details when you pitch it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's a problem of going too broad. You want to go deep, not broad.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
All right. Fantastic. Hey, if you like our show, first of all, thank you. That's really nice of you. Please consider taking a minute to subscribe and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. And please share this with a friend. We would love to expand a little. We do all this talking. We want people listening. It's super fun. And we're across all sorts of platforms too. We're like on Instagram and I don't know. What are we on?
Yeah. All
YouTube. Just look at all the stuff. It's all fun. Hey, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.